Okay, we are now recording, so let's make a start to our call. So welcome everyone to our weekly call. For those of you that aren't live on the call, I'm currently sat in a hotel in Banff, so an hour and a half, I think, big flight from Vancouver. So looking forward to heading over there shortly. But recommend Canada as a west coast of Canada, at least as a holiday destination in the summer as well. Right, let me share my screen. Which I've now done. Okay, I'm using my just my laptop screen today. I don't have a second screen, so if anyone wants to draw my attention to anything in the chat, please just call out in case I've overlooked something. It's not I'm ignoring it because I can't see it easily. Right, okay, anyway, let's look at the agenda for our call today. So as a reminder, we sort of started discussing the IETF 120 meeting agenda on the call last week, and the purpose of the call this week is to really sort of finish that discussion. So that's mainly what we're going to be spending some time on the call. What I'm not going to do is spend any time talking about any of the BOFs in any great detail, and that's primarily because rather helpfully, Mark McFadden has posted a blog on the DNS Research Federation site where he just walks through all 5 of the BOFs currently on the agenda for the meeting. So rather than sort of cover that same ground, anyone that wants to have a more sort of in-depth look at the sort of details of the BOFs, sort of look at Mark's blog, and I think you'll find some excellent detail on that. Okay, and I'll try not to duplicate everything that we covered on the call last week, or at least I'll run over it somewhat more quickly this time. So just a reminder, the hackathon kicks off next Saturday, and Saturday and Sunday. The hackathon runs immediately prior to the meeting, as always, with the results from the hackathon 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Also on Sunday, you've got the IEPG slot in the morning. I haven't yet seen an agenda for that. I couldn't see it looking online just now. But as we discussed last week, usually more operationally orientated stuff. And then, as always, you've got quick connections for new participants. Anyone that is new or relatively new to the community, that's well worth going along to. Be reminded to pre-register for that. And that sort of segues into the welcome reception also on Sunday afternoon. And then the hot RFC Lightning talks, which is a 4-minute talk on a complete random cross-section of topics, and those are all worth going to, in my opinion. And by the way, I'm going to run through all of this, but stop me, interrupt me if you've got anything to add, and I will try and remember to pause as well. But if I don't, you've got something there that's in context, then do interrupt as we go along. So last week I highlighted, and we discussed briefly, we've got the IETF-wide sort of dispatch session during session 1 on Monday, and then sort of the Deleg and IETF Open were the 2 other sessions I highlighted as, in my opinion, sort of worth going to sessions 1 and 2 on Monday. On the screen now, you'll see a sort of a heavily summarized version of the agenda for all dispatch. So as you can see, a variety of topics. I think the plan is to keep each one to 15 minutes. So rather more tightly sort of managed than the session was in Brisbane, but that's to be expected because that was always intended as an experiment, as is this one. So you can see that the list of topics, I haven't really got anything to add to those. I assume the slides are now available for them all, for those of you that are interested. And then looking across to the right-hand side of the slide, in session 2 on Monday, you've got the DELEG session, which sort of is a follow-on from the BOF that took place in Brisbane, and the bulk of the agenda time for that will focus on what the requirements document should contain for DELEG. And there's a whole list of subtopics for that, but broadly speaking, it's covering off requirements. If you look on the agenda page, you'll find more details. I will share these slides, by the way, and as you can see, the session titles do link through to the agendas. At the same time as DELEG in session 2, you'll see there's the IETF Open, and the two topics there that caught my eye were one looking at extended DNS errors, and a second one looking at key transparency for end-to-end encrypted messaging. So I think that those two look worthwhile. So which one, if you're attracted to both of those, and the choice which one you go to will, I guess, just depend on the detail of those two. But it's unfortunate way that they are back to back, but having agenda clashes is kind of inevitable given the large number of sessions that are on the agenda for this IETF meeting. And then sessions 3 and 4 on Monday, we had DNS Ops, MOP, Media Ops, SRv6, all in session 3, and PEARG in session 4, and then just unpacking those. DNS Ops has got there's an announcement about a side meeting on DNS-based load balancing. You can see. And then there's sort of a couple of other topics. I'm not going to read them all out. You can read them as quickly as I can do so, if not more so. That's competing with SRv6 Ops. And again, you can see the session there. So this is very much orientated towards operators primarily. One thing which caught my eye as I was looking at the detail of the agenda is almost, or not 100%, but the majority of the presenters appear to be from Chinese operators, which I thought was just an interesting observation. Not sure why that should be specifically, but they seem to have put forward presumably more proposals for content for SRv6 Ops than anybody else. And then MOPS is there wasn't enough room to put in underneath SRv6 Ops, but again, you can see the agenda for that. The one that I've highlighted specifically, and this is one that Glenn talked on the call last week, is network overlay impacts on streaming, which is starting to look at some of the challenges posed to streaming by different types of different protocols. Which Glenn touched on that last week, so having looked at the agenda, I thought that was a valid one as well. So you've got, in my view, 3 interesting sessions to choose from in session 3 on Monday. Whereas in session 4, the only thing that caught my eye was the PEARG session, and specifically the privacy preserving network layer protocol. Presentation, which I think is quite an intriguing idea. So I'm looking forward to that late on Monday. I'm just going to pause there for a moment and see if anything else, well, anyone's got any comments on any of that, or indeed anything else from the agenda on Monday, if you've had a chance to look at any of the details from the various working group sessions. And in the event of silence, I will plough on straight into the first 2 sessions on Tuesday, which is the Secure Communications and Network Properties, BOF, MIMI, and one of the applied networking research workshop. So just putting those up. Make sure I got the right page there. Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, so Scone Pro, as I said, had to take a look at Mark's document. There isn't an agenda published for that yet, but Mark's put some interesting as a useful context for that BOF. So as I mentioned at the start of the call, that's well worthwhile looking at that. Also in session one, that's the first of the applied networking research workshops. And I thought the network observer factor was looked like an interesting topic on the agenda for that first session. And then that sort of segues neatly into session two of the, I think there are 4 applied networking research workshops. So session 2 is sort of next. And again, the one that caught my eye at the bottom there, you'll see is to switch or not to switch to L4S incentives for adopting L4S in a partial deployment. So that's a low latency protocol, something which I know Jason Livingood, amongst others, has been very keen on over the last a couple of meetings or so, I think, in the IETF. At the same time, on Tuesday afternoon, there's a MIMI that's more instant messaging, looking at the interconnectivity of the instant messaging platforms, but thus far, MIMI doesn't have a published agenda, unfortunately. Although it does have 2 separate agenda slots, as you'll see shortly. So I can't say too much about MIMI at the moment, so likely you'll find me in the ANRW session, probably. Absent any more details on MIMI. Then we got sort of sessions 3 and 4 on Tuesday. Again, it's mainly the ANRW slot plus mask, and looking at the details of the agenda for the ANRW. The carbon aware interdomain routing extension to BGP, which I think is a really interesting idea. Take into account the sort of energy cost of routing when making routing decisions. And also there's a paper looking at protocol fixes for the key trap vulnerabilities, which came to light earlier this year. Mask doesn't have an agenda yet, or it didn't a couple of hours ago when I looked, so I can't really comment on that. So again, based on the information so far, you'll find me in that ANRW session, and also session 4 on lightning papers. Certainly the bottom one there, the large language models dream of sockets. I don't know if that's an intentional play on Philip Dick's well-known novel of a sort of nearly similar title. But yeah, appealed to my sense of humour when I was sort of plowing through the detail of the agenda. And that's it for me for Tuesday. So again, I'll just pause there. Anyone got anything else to add to any of that, or indeed anything else from Tuesday? If there's silence, I will continue. So, Wednesday, session 1 and 2, we've got a bunch of things, BOF and a couple of research groups during session 1 that we highlighted, and then again a BOF and a couple of the sessions Wednesday session 2. So looking at those in a little bit more detail. Oh, sorry, Vicky. Yes.
I haven't read this. So do you know what the digital emblems BOF is? Is that like JavaScript badges or something else?
I haven't looked at that in detail, but to be honest, that's why I think Mark's document you'll find really useful, because he does actually explain it. I read it really quickly just to see what was in it. So apologies for not giving a coherent explanation, but take a look at that.
Okay.
It's quite useful in getting context for all of the BOF.
Thanks.
Okay. Sort of, so conflicting with the digital emblems, BOF, you've got the DIN-RG research group looking at sort of centralization, decentralization. Again, sadly, no agenda published for that yet. There's usually some good stuff on there, but I don't know what that is there yet. And sadly, this time around, that clashes with another research group, the MAP research group, measurement analysis for protocols. I've listed the various topics that are on the agenda for that, and in particular, I think the field experiments for post-quantum DNSSEC look very interesting to me. Did a couple of blog posts on that topic, so I think that would be really quite an interesting presentation, certainly worth catching up on. And then session 2, another BOF, so same answer I gave just now in terms of taking a look at Mark's document for the sort of context to it, which is getting ready for energy efficient networking, certainly an important topic. That coincides with the RASP-RG, so Research Analysis for Standard Setting Processes research group. Again, you can see the various topics there, and I think I'm intrigued with the gender mattering in standards development. I think certainly diversity matters in standards development, so it'd be interesting to see why specifically gender has been called out rather than diversity more generally. So I think that could be an interesting one. But that's competing with the TLS working group, and 2 things on there. One we touched on very briefly last week, which is the SSL keylog for ECH, for which there was a new internet draft published, I think just on or before the cutoff for this meeting. But also one of the other topics listed is trust expressions, which has had an enormous amount of discussion on the TLS working group mailing list. So it's got 20 minutes allocated. I think that's quite ambitious, judging from the volume of differing viewpoints on trust expressions. So that's definitely well worth, I think, either attending live, or if you can't do that, certainly catching up on the recording post-meeting. I think that'll be quite a lively discussion in the TLS working group, that one. I think that's carrying on Wednesday. We've then got HRPC, Human Rights Protocol Considerations, and the IETF plenary. Sadly, there's no detail yet for the HRPC research group, so can't comment on that. You usually have some very good discussions there. And then the plenary is usually very interesting. Certainly the open mic sessions, where either there's no questions at all, or there's a very lively debate. I'm not sure which way around it's going to be this meeting, but always worth sort of turning up both for the various updates from the sort of different groups, and then the discussion on the open mic at the end. Again, let me just pause there to see if anyone's got anything to highlight, to add to anything I've just said, or anything else you want to highlight from the agenda from the Wednesday. Nothing so far. Okay. In which case, I will proceed to Thursday, the marathon day for this meeting, with 5 sessions, as you'll see in a moment. So we sort of kicked off with Mimi in Thursday session 1, and the next the BOF network attestation for secure routing, and then the IB Open in session 2, and also I should mention the Sisters Lunch for those of you interested in attending that. I don't know if you have to pre-register for that, but I suspect you possibly do. But that's as it normally is on Thursday lunchtime. So I'll refer you, as always, to Mark's document for the BOF. Mimi, as before, the agenda is not available yet. For the IRP, the IAB even open, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, you've got the Morgue Liaison update, an introduction to the AI control workshop and the NEMOPS workshops, then an invited talk on community networks. So I think the two workshop introductions should be quite useful just to get a better understanding of those. And I think I'm right in saying for the AI control workshop, there's a deadline looming of papers, I think a week after the IETF meeting. So just do bear that in mind. So that's coming up soon as well if you want to submit papers to that. Then we got session 3, the ADD, amongst other topics. Session 4, SPICE, which has morphed from a bot now into a regular working group. Can't do anything about the ADD session yet because the agenda's not available. I don't know if Tail or Glenn are on the call, wish to add anything. And for SPICE, there are 4 documents listed, which again, they've got equal time allocation to each of those. So if you're interested in SPICE, take a look.
I am here, Andrew.
Oh, perfect. Anything you can, any hints you can give to the ADD agenda yet, Glenn?
Yeah, I'm waiting on one person that usually presents to request time. I'm going back and forth on email, so I'm trying to get their topic before I publish it. But I'll try to get it out later today if I don't hear back. Tommy Jensen will be talking about his current draft that the working group just adopted on the session, and hopefully we'll have one other discussion. I won't name the person because I'm waiting to hear back from them if they present or not, but I don't want to shame them publicly. But yes.
Fair enough. Well, I guess they know who they are, so hopefully they'll come back to you sooner rather than later to confirm their interest then, in that case. Brilliant. Thanks, Glenn.
Stay tuned. Well, it will be published very, very soon, but it's also a fairly light agenda for ADD, which is good. Calm is good.
Yeah, more time for discussion, which is always a good thing. Brilliant. Thanks, Glenn. And then finally, also on Thursday, as I say, this has got five separate sessions, so going to be a heavy day. You got DNS Ops part 2, plus OHI, Oblivious HTTP application intermediation, and then the new participant social hour, just capping off the day. Looking at those, for DNS Ops, amongst other things, you've got the summary of the load balancing side meeting, which will have taken place by then. Whereas in OHI, Tommy Paul is presenting 2 papers, one on chunked OHTTP, which I think was discussed in Brisbane, and a second paper on Oblivious HTTP deployment experience. So both of those, as I say, being presented by Tommy Pauly from Apple. So I know Apple is very keen on Oblivious. So hence, I guess, putting a fair amount of time into it just now. Oh, sorry, let me just pause there in case anyone else has anything else to say about Thursday. I'm guessing not. So Friday then, so we're on the home straight. We've got the independent stream network management ops and privacy preserving measurements. And looking at those, you got I think the independent stream open meeting, I don't recall that featuring on one of the sort of previous meetings, but the bulk of the time is there's a presentation about independent submissions followed by a discussion. I think it's really to get a sense of what purpose the independent stream does or could serve. So I personally, I think that's probably the one to go to. And then session 2, so you got network management ops and privacy preserving management. I put those agenda points for NMOP on the screen. PPM, there's no agenda yet, so that's TBA currently. And then finally, session 3 was a bit lighter content-wise, as you can see. I'm sure they're all very good topics, if that's your thing, but none of them as yet have got an agenda, which is unfortunate. And then that leads into the farewell reception, which will probably collapse into a heap after a very busy week. Again, let me just pause in case anyone's got anything to add from the Friday. And if not, just a quick reminder, I'm not spending time on these, but just to highlight from the side meetings, I definitely think the post-quantum DNS research one will be worth going to if that doesn't clash with anything else that's important to you. I didn't really see anything on the Tuesday. Wednesday, that's the load balancing presentation, which is going to be up, a summarized update will be given in the DNS Ops part 2 on Thursday. I definitely think the Public Interest Technology Group, HG, on Thursday, immediately after session 5, will be worth going to. And then finally on Friday, as I mentioned before, we got EODIA in its now traditional 8 to 15 slot on Friday, which is a pain for those of us that are feeling a bit jaded after a busy week. And I can see in the chat, Vicky, yeah, the network teardown, I imagine, is always a challenge at the end of the week. I think that was everything I had from the agenda. So before I move on, anyone got anything you want to call out that you think has been overlooked? And if not, as I say, I'll ping the slides out either later today or tomorrow with links to the individual agendas, all of which are also available from obviously the IETF main site as well, and will be updated, no doubt, with tweaks here and there between now and the meeting. Okay, let's just move on quickly. I don't know why I left that in there. Sorry, a couple of spurious slides, ignore those. Right. Okay. So in the meantime, various bits and pieces have been happening in the news. You would have, those of you that are on the mailing list will have had these earlier today. If you're not on the mailing list and want to be, just send me a message and I'll add you to it. But there's one of the members of the DNS for EU consortium put out their thoughts on data protection and privacy within the project. So that's looking at sort of e-privacy, GDPR compliance, etc. That's and a reminder, DNS for EU, that's the part funded by the European Commission to develop an open resolver that's owned and operated within the European Union. So part of sort of digital sovereignty, I guess, among other things. So yeah, you may find that worth a look. And then just the bottom of the screen, the other one I mentioned, since I've been talking about post-quantum cryptography and DNSSEC, Peter Thomason and Jason Gortson put together a blog post on the APNIC site on that very topic. So that no doubt will give an indication of some of the ground that we covered in that side meeting at the IETF next week. In terms of other things worth mentioning, probably the other two I'll call out, you'll see you got the IGF 2024 workshops details are now published. I think that was the back end of last week. They listed the workshop proposals that have been accepted onto the agenda for the IGF meeting at the end of this year. So if you're interested more on, typically they lean more towards policy, but not always 100%. I think there's 80 odd proposals that will be absorbed into the agenda. Also this week, today and Thursday, there are two free events, that should say, a typo, so apologies, webinars for the APAC DNS forum. That's the ICANN, I think, DNS forum taking place in APAC in a few weeks' time. So they're doing 4 pre-event webinars, and the last 2 of those are scheduled this week before the event itself takes place. I think that's in Bali, of all places, which would be fantastic. And then, yeah, bottom of the screen, you'll see that's just a reminder about Mark Adams' blog on the 5 bots listed take place during the IETF meeting. So whole range of various other things that caught my eye. I'm probably not worth going into those in detail. These tend to be more policy orientated, so I'll let you sort of peruse those at your leisure. So I'll send out the slides so you can click through those if you're interested. In terms of impending deadlines, just a reminder, if you're planning to put in a proposal for the OARC meeting that takes place in Prague in late October, the deadline to put an abstract in is the 23rd, so that's not so far away. Similarly, if you want to take part in the European Commission's consultation on the NIS2 proposals, that's also next week. And if you want to have a remote hub part of the IGF event at the end of this year, again, that's at the end of this month, as is a call for applications for funding from the RIPE Community Projects Fund. So a few things coming up over the next sort of couple of weeks or thereabouts. Okay, obviously the next major event, as you can see, is the IETF meeting starting next weekend with the hackathon coinciding in with the APAC DNS forum in Bali, which shame not to be there, but there you are. You can't have everything, and then a whole bunch of stuff running through over the next few months. September and October look especially busy just now. And then also a reminder, we don't have a call this time next week because of the clash with the IETF meeting, but we will do a roundup of some of the highlights from the meeting in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, come armed with your thoughts if you're attending the meeting either in person or remotely. I think that's it from me. So deliberately quick run through just to sort of share some of the additional detail for the IETF meeting. So let me stop sharing my screen and just see that we do have a little bit of time for any other business, should anyone have any. So anything you want to comment on from what I've covered, or anything else you want to talk about, either way, the floor's yours. So just sort of raise your virtual hand and put something in the chat, which I can now see, or just no one else is talking, feel free to unmute and start talking. So Glenn, over to you first.
You know, it does occur to me that on these IETF meetings where you skip the calls, we should organize a meetup of some sort, possibly involving a beverage of some sort, just to keep the spirit of the call alive.
So you say you should have beer on Monday. Is that the gist of that? Or indeed every day, but Monday in particular?
I'm just saying, missing an opportunity for the fine people to get together is always an opportunity wasted.
That's a fine idea, which I will take note of. Yeah, but if yeah, maybe not at 8 a.m. Local time. Perhaps Vicky, that might be a bit keen as a way to start. Yeah, coffee. Yeah, fair enough. Beer will make for a lively sort of day one. Yeah, we could do that. If anyone happens to be up.
Free coffee. If the IETF has a barista this time again, maybe we can even get free coffee.
Yes, now that we're not in Australia, we might get some decent coffee again. Who knows? That will be a good thing. And I have to say, there's some really nice beers I've sampled so far this week. Some very nice Canadian beers, which I can certainly recommend. So yes, well, yeah, if anyone happens to have some free time Monday evening local time, and find yourself in Vancouver, yeah, we could certainly do beer or other beverages on Monday evening instead. Yeah, thanks for that excellent suggestion, Glenn. Anything else from anyone else? And there might be things in the chat. Oh no, that's Vicky's comments. Yes. Okay. Any other anything else on people's minds currently? Taking probably not. Well, in which case, as I said at the start of the call, I'm going to be in Vancouver in a well, late tomorrow evening. So effectively from Wednesday onwards. So we'll definitely be around for the hackathon. So if anyone happens to be there for the weekend, wants to meet up, just drop me a line, let me know. Otherwise, who knows? See you in Vancouver, either in person or online. And if you are in person, let's see if we can do something Monday evening as well, which would be good. So otherwise, have a great week. If you're traveling to Vancouver, have a safe trip over, and look forward to see you there in person, hopefully on Monday. So catch you all then. Bye, everyone.